I love what I do. I love my YouTube channel. I put so much time and effort into it, and I get a lot out of it thanks to brilliant comments, brilliant subscribers, a lovely community. And if you want to be a deeper part of that community, consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/booksandbow. If you join my Patreon at just $1, you can join a private Discord server full of lovely bookworms. And if you join $10 or higher, you get to join a monthly book club that I host over Zoom. This book club is one of the highlights of my month. I love it to bits. The people who join are the sweetest, most wholesome, most wonderful bookworms in the whole wide world. I love my Patreon community. Feel free to join from $1 up. I put out a lot of videos and I put a lot into them because of my Patreon community. And I'm very grateful to all of them. Patreon.com/booksandbow. Now on with the video. According to my calculations, not real calculations, I'm too pretty to do actual calculations, I have read 15 books this month, which averages at one every 2 days. How? I don't believe that. But it's in my calculations. I am very pretty. Whatever the case, here are 15 things I read this month. First thing I read was Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This was a book that I wanted to read in the lead up to going to Comic-Con because I knew I was going to meet him as part of this blogger program where a bunch of us little bloggers and writers and Instagrammers and TikTokers got to meet a bunch of sci-fi and fantasy authors. And Adrian Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite science fiction authors ever. So I read Shards of Earth, which is the first book in a big sci-fi epic. He wanted to try and do a space opera, and he succeeded. I didn't love it half as much as Children of Time, which remains one of my favorite sci-fi novels of all time. Children of Time is a very clever sci-fi novel about what would happen if the predominant species on a planet were spiders. Spiders evolved to be the main species on a planet. What would their cities look like? What would their communication systems look like? What would their economy look like? It's incredible. Shards of Earth is very different. There is a mysterious group of enigmatic, unknowable, Lovecraftian creatures called the Architects that come along and blow up planets, kind of. They turn a planet inside out, open it up, and turn it into this kind of flower-looking thing, and then they fuck off. And they just do that as they're tearing through the galaxy, through the universe. They just do this. And the big question is, what are they and why are they doing it? And now in this world, humanity is part of a kind of intergalactic group of races. And we're following a protagonist who was genetically engineered to try and stave off these enormous architects. If you've ever played the Mass Effect games, you're probably thinking, wow, this sounds like Mass Effect. And yeah, it is very Mass Effect. It was a lot of fun, but I still preferred Children of Time. And I haven't read the other 2 books in the Children of Time series yet, but I'm absolutely going to. I don't know if I'll continue with Shards of Earth, but I need to read Children of Ruin as soon as possible. Then I read and reviewed Ghost Music by Yu. You can go watch my review, it's up on the channel. Ghost Music is a novel by a Chinese author who writes in English, so it's not translated by anyone. It is her second novel. I liked her first novel, Braised Pork, well enough. It was very Murakami-esque. But Ghost Music is a lot better. It's her taking her craft and refining it beautifully. We begin with a feverish dream. This woman that we're following wakes up in a strange room in a bed in the middle of a place she doesn't recognize, and there are mushrooms growing out of the floorboards that she can hear and kind of talk to. The main story revolves around her relationship to her husband, to her mother-in-law, to these strange packages that arrive at their door in Beijing. The mother-in-law recognizes a lot of the packages because they're always full of mushrooms, and those mushrooms often grow in the original area where she grew up, and where our protagonist's husband also grew up. She's also a pianist and a piano teacher, and her father was a pretty successful pianist, and there is a history of music and a love of music, hence the title. It's a deceptively simple novel about love, about relationships, about strained family dynamics, and yet it's also a really trippy fever dream. Once again, easily comparable to Murakami, but without any misogyny. I really enjoyed it. I like her books, and I think that this second novel of hers is infinitely better than the first. As I said, it's just her refining her craft beautifully. Then I read The Liminal Zone by Junji Ito, which is a collection of long-form short stories of his. Again, I've done a video on this, you can go watch it. I love Junji Ito, he is my favourite manga creator, he's my favourite horror writer, and his short stories are my favourite things that he does. And The Liminal Zone is a collection of four longer short stories. They're very much based on cult dynamics and religion, as a lot of his stuff is. He is very inspired by Lovecraft. Lovecraft's stuff is inspired by religions and cults, so you get religions and cults. The Liminal Zone is absolutely wonderful. Junji Ito's short stories, in spite of them being my favourite thing he does, can be very hit and miss. If you read the Shiver collection, every story in there is amazing. But if you read the Smashed collection, only one or two really stand out and the rest are kind of duds. It feels like a B-reel. But the Liminal Zone, yeah, you've got 4 long bangers. And I was really happy with it. And the last book that I don't have on me to show you is X by Davy Davis. Again, I've done a review of this, you can go check it out. It is a brand new queer novel. It is set in Brooklyn. It's about a non-binary character who is looking for a woman who really rocked their world one night. It is a novel full of kink, but it's also a very political novel, in which undesirables are being exported from the United States. If you're an immigrant, if you're the wrong colour, if you're the wrong sexuality or gender expression, you might get kicked out. And our protagonist knows that it's kind of just a matter of time before they get their letter, and they also think that this person X, whom they are looking for, has already gotten their letter. And so our protagonist, who is a very, very depressed person, who struggles with their mental health, struggles with trauma, struggles with all sorts of things, has a lot of toxic friends, is rushing around Brooklyn trying to find X, a sadistic woman who might hopefully be the answer to all of their prayers, but probably not. It's a book about queer relationships, about queer communities, very close-knit, tight queer communities, the overlap between queerness and kink, the overlap between queerness, kink, and the government and the way that our governments are treating us as queer people at the moment. It's a very, very well-written, snarky, angry book, and it's full of kink and sex, and I loved it. Okay, from the pile that's in the thumbnail, I'm just gonna go from the top down because, otherwise... So let's start with What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This was my first ever T. Kingfisher book. I have 2 more of her books waiting to go that I can't wait to read. And this is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. Once again, I have a video on this. I don't know if you can hear that, but there are children just screaming outside. I hate children. Anywho, Fall of the House of Usher. I like The Fall of the House of Usher, and this is better. This builds upon The Fall of the House of Usher in a lot of really clever ways. As I said in my original video, it takes a lot of guts to pick up an iconic story. A story that is part of the fabric of a genre, one of the building blocks of that genre, and go, I can make this better. I can make it longer, I can expand on it, I can modernize it a little bit. I can present questions and answer those questions in a really compelling way and create an original piece of horror out of this seed that Poe created and make it flourish into this enormous, frightening plant. And this awkward metaphor that I'm using right now is actually pretty appropriate to this story. A few people asked me in the comments, do I need to read The Fall of the House of Usher before I read this? No. I don't remember it that well, and I loved every second of this. I'm really looking forward to what T. Kingfisher can offer now based on this, because this is an absolute doozy. The way that she writes is gorgeous, her characterization, her setting, her tone, and there are some truly frightening moments in this book that I did not expect. I don't often get chilled by horror novels these days because I read so many of them. This one really chilled me. Here's another horror novel. Grady Hendrix's The Final Girl Support Group. Grady Hendrix is also a new author to me, and I can't wait to read more of his stuff. He has a new book coming out next year, I think, that I'm really excited to read. One of my patrons mentioned it in our recent book club. She managed to get an advanced copy of it. I was very, very jealous because this is really fantastic. If you like slasher horror fiction, you're going to enjoy this. It is a piece of meta-commentary on the slasher genre, and there's already a lot of that. The Scream franchise is kind of that. The Cabin in the Woods film is kind of that. And Stephen Graham Jones's novel My Heart is a Chainsaw is also kind of that. So there's a lot of meta commentary on slashers, and yet all of it is good. All of it is unique. It all manages to stand on its own, as does the Final Girl support group. This book tells the story of a group of middle-aged women who, when they were teenagers, were final girls, the survivors of massacres by masked men. And at the beginning, one of them doesn't show up to the support group meeting that they've been doing for like 20 years, and it turns out she's dead. So now someone is killing off final girls, and we follow specifically one of these final girls who is actually the outlier of the entire group, because she was the only girl in her group who didn't kill the masked man. And so some people say she's not even a real final girl, and now she, as the most paranoid one, has taken it upon herself to solve this mystery, to try to survive, to figure out what the hell is going on. It's a rip-roaring thriller adventure that I absolutely adored. It's got murder mystery vibes, it's got thriller vibes, it's got horror vibes, and it's very clever meta-commentary. It looks at the history of slasher fiction, it looks at the tropes and the themes, and Grady Hendrix is a really fantastic writer of women. All the characters in this are women. He's a guy, and he does a great job of writing a brilliant cast of female protagonists and support characters. This is The Tattoo Murder. It's written by Japanese author Akimitsu Takagi, and it is translated into English by Deborah Boehm. I've never read this author before, and I don't think I've ever read this translator before. It's published by Pushkin Vertigo, and my review of it will be coming out very, very soon. In the UK, this book is already out, and I really, really urge you to go get it if you love murder mysteries, if you love Agatha Christie. This is the perfect thing to be reading around Christmas time. I always read Agatha Christie books at Christmas, and I'm really glad I read this. In fact, of the honkaku genre of Japanese murder mysteries, this one might be my new favourite. My current favourite is probably The Decagon House Murders, which is actually an homage to Christie's most beloved novel, And Then There Were None, and this now sits alongside that one. The Tattoo Murder is fantastic. It's set in 1947, and that's also when it was written, so it's just post-World War II, in a Tokyo that is ravaged in terms of its physicality, but also its economy. Our protagonist is a budding scientist who's currently doing his PhD. His brother is the chief of police, which is handy, and he falls for this girl at the beginning who, her father was a tattoo artist. She has a snake tattoo on her back. Her sister and her brother were both heavily tattooed people, and we know from the blurb that she is the murder victim. But in the first quarter, we really get to know her. We really become attached to her before she's then killed. And her death is really gruesome. It's a dismemberment, and it's a locked room murder mystery. So we follow this protagonist as he tries to figure out who done it. Obviously, his brother gets involved as chief of police. And it builds and it builds and it builds, and you have a huge list of suspects, the biggest one being another professor who has a frightening obsession with tattoos and tattooed skin. He made his wife get a tattoo in order for them to get married, and he has asked this woman if he can peel the skin from her back once she's dead so he can savour her tattoo. And so you think, well, surely he did it, but that's too obvious. I won't tell you any more because my full review is coming. I also read this, which is a book that's been on my list for like a year. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. This is an ideal book for me. This is a hedonistic book about an awkward anti-hero. It is a coming-of-age story, and it is a very queer, non-binary, transgender novel. The titular Paul is a shapeshifter. It's set in the early 90s, and he has the ability to shapeshift. He can make his willy longer or thicker, and he can transform his entire body into a woman. And so he has a lot of fun sexually with that, with exploring different sexual partners from different perspectives, in different scenarios, and being hedonistic sexually. He travels across the United States, he does odd jobs, he's a university student, blah blah blah. It's a coming-of-age story. But I only liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it was alright. I just didn't feel much for Paul. I didn't feel much for what he was going through. I couldn't find the strength to care that much, even though on paper this is a perfect novel for me and it's brilliantly written. It's very savvy, it's very witty, it's dark and funny, and it's really clever. I can see all of that stuff. I just didn't care that much. Oh well. Speaking of trans stuff, I also read a manga called To Strip the Flesh by Oto Toda. This manga was translated by Emily Blistrieri, who is also a trans man, and the manga is about a trans man. This manga broke my heart, and then fixed it back together again. I've read a lot of transgender stories in my day. I have a huge article on our website that is just full of trans novels, short story collections, biographies, all sorts of stuff. I read a lot of trans stuff. I'm trans. But nothing hit me as hard as this. To Strip the Flesh is a fantastic tale of love between a father and son, although that father at the beginning does not know that his son is trans. It's called To Strip the Flesh because the father is a hunter, and his son, or from his perspective, daughter, strips the flesh from these hunted and killed animals. And he's quietly transitioning in the background without telling his dad. But his dad is sick, and now he's wondering, do I tell my dad, or do I just keep it to myself? And it's about their relationship, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's short as well. Just a 2-chapter manga as part of a big short story collection that you can go get and read now. And To Strip the Flesh is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Next up is Bunny. This is a pretty anticipated read for me. It's been out for a while and people love it. Again, I have a video coming very, very soon. Bunny is a novel that people adore. This novel is now, I'm not sure, 2 or 3 years old, and everyone loves it. It's often on people's favorite books of all time lists. It's a modern classic. It's a piece of dark academia, and it's real good. I finally read Bunny. It is very much Donna Tartt's The Secret History mixed with the movie Heathers. The titular Bunny is actually a group of girls. It's set in a university in Warren, Vermont. There is a creative writing postgraduate class, and it's a small group of girls who do this creative writing class, and all but one of them are a bunch of cliquey, annoying girls who call each other Bunny. Our protagonist is the outlier of this group, a punk goth girl who wants nothing to do with them and sneers at them and hates them all, until she is invited to one of their get-togethers one evening. And what she finds there is weird culty shit. This book is feverish and strange, it's funny, it's satirical, it is odd, it is brutal, it is a lot of things that I didn't expect. I knew it was dark academia, I knew it would be strange, I knew it would be satirical, I knew all of that, I just didn't know the lengths that it would go to. It is wildly strange, and I loved the ride, and I can't wait to talk about it in an upcoming video. Another manga that I read was Love Me Not. I wanted to read some nice wholesome romance manga, and Love Me Not is a really, really sweet, charming thing. It has 2 protagonists, 2 heroines, 2 teenage girls who have just started high school together and have very different attitudes towards love. One of them is a romantic who thinks that her Prince Charming will just come along at some point and sweep her off her feet. The other one is more fuck around and find out. She flirts with guys, she dates guys, she has a more realistic approach to love. I will date this guy, see how it goes, then I'll date this guy, see how it goes, etc, etc. And they become fast friends in the first days of high school. But there's a lot of drama based on their different interpretations of love and how you find it. It's really sweet, it's wholesome, there's some very relatable drama going on here, and I had a lot of fun with it. I read the first volume. I don't know if I'll read more. I don't feel that invested, but I really enjoyed my time with it. However, a romance manga that I am now very invested in and I can't wait to read volume 2 of is My Love Mix-Up. Oh wow, so I saw a TikTok recently about how love triangles are never actually love triangles. It's always one person trying to pick between 2 people. And that's not actually a triangle. A true love triangle has to have some queerness in it for it to work, because of gender dynamics. And this manga, My Love Mix-Up, is an actual love triangle. I can't remember their names. So you've got blonde boy, brown-haired boy, and girl. Blonde boy fancies girl. Then he finds out that girl fancies brown-haired boy. Brown-haired boy somehow gets the wrong end of the stick and thinks that blonde boy fancies him, and doesn't turn him down, and actually goes, well, maybe. You know, I've never dated anyone before, we're all in high school, I've never even had a crush, maybe I'm gay. and he's trying to figure out what he is. He could be gay, straight, bi, ace, he's not sure. And so he kind of develops a crush on Blonde Boy as he's trying to figure himself out. He becomes quite attached to him. So now you've got a perfect love triangle. Blonde Boy likes girl, girl likes brown-haired boy, and brown-haired boy likes blonde boy. That's a love triangle. It is sweet, it is funny, it is wholesome, it is very, very queer inclusive, and there are some twists as it goes. There's a huge twist at the end of Volume 1, which is Chapter 5, and I need to read Volume 2. My Love Mix-Up is plenty of fun. Then there's this, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, an author that I also got to meet at Comic-Con. Oh my god, he's a sweetie. He is just so charming and lovely. And this is a novel set in a fantasy world. It's very reminiscent of isekai manga and anime. And it tells the story of a barbarian called Viv who has decided to retire from her life of killing monsters to open a coffee shop. She learned about coffee from the gnomes in the gnome city. So, in another city, she opens up a coffee shop. And this is about found family. It's about her recruiting people, building the coffee shop together, and making friends along the way. It's so sweet and charming. It's low stakes in the sense that there are no big end-of-the-world war about to brew things. It's less about brewing wars, and more about brewing coffee. It's really good. Go watch my video on it. A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I made a TikTok and a YouTube video on this, and I said the word sexy a lot in those videos, and people were making drinking game jokes. Fair enough. This is a really sexy book. Sexy, sexy vampire book. It is about the Brides of Dracula. We learn at the beginning that the Brides of Dracula have killed Dracula, and then we follow the story to see how we got there, especially considering at the beginning our main protagonist was a war orphan with nothing that Dracula took in, bit, and turned into his bride. Centuries go by, and it's sexy. Go watch my video. And finally, I think finally, is this, Her Majesty's Royal Coven, or Hmrc, by Juno Dawson. My next video following this one will be about this book. Juno Dawson is a trans author who has written some really, really good non-fiction about being gay and trans. And this is her first adult novel after writing a whole bunch of YA fiction that I have not read. And this is honestly one of my favourite books of this year. It tells the story of 4 young women in the present day who are all witches. In this world, a small percentage of people are magical, and they are sent to train as either witches or warlocks. And there is a thing called Her Majesty's Royal Coven, Hmrc, that is the government agency of witches. In this world, witches are always more powerful than warlocks. One of our 4 protagonists is now the head, the high priestess of Hmrc, and the other 3 are doing other stuff. But there is a child, a boy, that they have found who is frighteningly powerful. He does something really bad, he gets taken into the custody of Hmrc, and then released again as they try to figure him out, figure out who he is, where he came from. He's a mute, he won't talk, and they need to find out why he's so powerful, especially as a boy. This is really good. Watch my video on it as soon as it comes out. I'm so excited to talk about it. I mean, I already have. The video's already been made. So check it out. Okay, there you go. That was 12 novels and 3 manga that I read in November. I had a lot of fun, big reading month. I can't believe I managed to read so much stuff. I will also be reviewing 3 Japanese novels in December and doing my end of year wrap-up stuff. I'm going to do Best Translated Books of the Year, Best English Language Books of the Year, and I think I'm also going to do a video on my favourite albums of the year, because I love music, I have a YouTube channel, why not make an albums list? It'll be fun. I always write one and tweet it. This year I'm going to make a video on it, I think. So look out for those. Those 3 videos will be coming very soon, mid-December probably, and then at the end of December, I'll probably do a video looking forward to the best books coming in 2023. Once again, if you love what I do, if you enjoyed this video, if what I do is worthwhile to you, consider joining my Patreon and subscribe for books.